This, I think, is going to be the beginning of something interesting. It's the old Picasso quote, all children are artists. The challenge is how to remain one when you grow up. Part of what we want to do is build the tools that allow everyone to do that.
What's on the Meta roadmap in the next decade that you think has the best chance of being one of these frame-breaking consumer tech moments?
I think the neural wristband is going to be a pretty big deal. It could end up being its own platform on its own. We're almost ready to start showing the prototype version of the full holographic glasses, and that's wild. Every person who I've shown it to, their reaction, it's like giddy.
As a product builder, what else needs to be in there for billions of people to prefer using glasses over the mobile phone as like the primary hardware device?
The demand for it has been so much higher than we expected. We're ramping up production and ramping up the factory lines. If you'd asked me that a year and a half ago, I would have said, in technology, every once in a while something comes along and just unleashes all these new opportunities and you need to rethink what you're doing. What are the trends that I'm seeing? Well, in social media, I'd say there's a few big ones. One is the shift from...
Mark, it's an honor. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. All right, so let's dive right in. Can you just talk about how Meta's approaching AI more broadly? Because there's going to be thousands of creators that listen to this. They know AI, they know the players, they've played with some of the tools, but I think it'd just be super helpful to hear from you. What's the Meta AI game plan and kind of how does it fit into the market?
Yeah, so what I'd say is that the biggest way that our approach here is different from all the other companies is you see a lot of other companies trying to build like one main AI that you're going to interact with, right? Whether it's Gemini for Google or ChatGPT for OpenAI. And I mean, our view, and we'll also have a basic assistant Meta AI that people can use, but our overall view is that this isn't the type of thing where there should just be one of. Or we think people want to interact with lots of different people and businesses, and there need to be a lot of different AIs that get created to reflect people's different interests. So a big part of the approach is going to be enabling every creator and then eventually also every small business on the platform to create an AI for themselves to help them interact with their community and their customers if they're a business. And we think that that's just going to create a much more compelling experience and just be more dynamic and useful than just having a single thing that people use. So, obviously a part of that is going to be that we're not building these things ourselves. We're building the underlying technology, and we want to make it so that the underlying model llama that we're building is absolutely world leading. All right, so we want to go for it and try to build full general intelligence and build the leading models. And I'm really happy with our progress there. But an equally important part of this is going to be building the tools for creators and businesses over time to be able to create AIs that reflect them and what they want to have out there, and also create all kinds of different experiences as well. So that's what the AI Studio announcement this week is. It's an early test, but it's an exciting one in terms of a step towards that vision.
And that's what I want to get into, because I think that worldview of like a network of maybe they're single purpose, maybe they're multi-purpose agents combined together, customized for each creator and business, that's exactly where I think we're headed as well. It's not a controversial thing to say in 10 years, I think we're going to have many, many, many more creators than we do today. And even more of that mainstream content is going to flow through creators. Meta has already been a principal layer of like laying those rails today. But when you think about what the future of creator experience looks like, what is that future like from a tactical use case perspective? What are some things that seem interesting to you?
Yeah, so first, I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, if you look at the kind of broader arc of human history, more people are just getting the chance to pursue their own creativity and their own interests, and not having to do as many jobs that they might find mundane or just doing to work, but basically are getting to do things that they really enjoy. And I think a lot of the arc of technology is enabling that, both by increasing productivity for the other tasks and just giving people all kinds of new tools. So this is definitely going to be part of what happens here. Is basically we want to build more tools that just enable more people, including people who don't consider themselves creators today, because I think everyone is creative in some way, and everyone. I just look at my kids like trying to, it's like they're not creators, but I mean they're definitely just like playing with their Legos, creating all kinds of different stuff. It's cool. It's the old Picasso quote: "All children are artists. The challenge is how to remain one when you grow up." And I think part of what we want to do is build the tools that allow everyone to do that. So, what are the trends that I'm seeing? Well, in social media, I'd say there's a few big ones. One is the shift from feed-based media to more personal messaging interactions. Right? If you look at Instagram, DMs is one of the fastest growing parts of the system. that's part of what I'm excited about here with Creator Studio and AI Studio is basically we're making it so that people are going to be able to kind of craft a persona for an AI version of themselves that's going to help them interact with all the incoming DMs that your community is sending you. And it's like the classic problem of there's just not enough hours in the day, right? I think every creator would want to engage with every fan who's reaching out to them, but you just don't have time. And of course, probably more people than are even sending messages would like to engage with something that creator is creating. But a lot of people probably don't even send the messages because they know that the creator is not going to get around to being able to message. So yeah, I mean, I think there's this whole question of how good are the AI agents that creators create for themselves going to be. And I think that's going to be an art form by itself that kind of grows and evolves over time, and it's going to get better and better. But I think for a lot of people, knowing that they're engaging with something that the creator created and had a hand in doing is going to be pretty meaningful. It may not be as good as interacting with the person themselves, but for a lot of people, that's not available because there's just not enough hours in the day for the creator to respond. So that's one big part. We can go deep on that. The other one that I'd say is growing really quickly is just reels and video, short form video. There's just been this pretty amazing trend where, you go from, movies and longer form TV shows. I mean, there was a time when people thought of YouTube as short form because people were comparing it to TVs and movie. But today, compared to real short form video, I mean, a lot of YouTube videos feel kind of long, right? You're multitasking while you're watching a YouTube video because it's going on for many minutes. And I think that is probably just going to continue because people are getting the tools to create really compelling content and get it to be super tight and crisp. And I think that the rate of kind of development of those tools is going to continue. And I think that people are going to be able to have use AI for creating video and editing, and there will still be a ton of creativity in that whole process because you'll have to kind of hone what you're building and shape it like a sculpture. But I think fundamentally it's going to be accessible, and the quality of the content is going to go up as it just gets, people can play around with a lot more different ideas. So probably those two, messaging and short form video, I think are the two big trends that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, I think that barbell strategy of on one end, the super raw, unedited, long form podcast style conversation. And then on the other end, exactly what you're saying, the super polished, short form storytelling in a bite-sized package. It seems like that's where attention's flowing to both those sides. I want to get into AI Studio on the tool side. So today, it's essentially the foundational building block. The way I look at it is the foundational building blocks for how creators are going to interact with AI within Meta's world. And today is, let's say, block one, just the foundational tooling. Can you talk about how you're stair-stepping that strategy? So what came out today? Why are you excited about it? I can share my feedback as well as a tester.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about the stair-step of that in terms of the tactical tools.
Yeah, so I'd say there's a few different paths of the technology at the same time. So one is just the development of Llama, the underlying model, and the tuning of that as we get feedback. So that's kind of something that's happening underneath the hood. That's kind of the core infrastructure. Then on top of that, there's all the product experience and tools that we're creating that allow people to create these different AIs. So whether it's a creator creating an AI agent version of themselves to interact with their community, at some point we're also rolling out people the ability for anyone to create UGC AIs, right? So it doesn't necessarily need to be you. It could just be a new kind of virtual persona that you create that you want to exist on Instagram and the apps and interact with people. And then probably won't get into this as much today, but on the business side, there are as many small businesses, if not more, than as there are creators today. I think that's a huge opportunity. It should be super simple for any business to just press a few buttons, get an agent version of themselves that can help do customer support and e-commerce support. I think that's going to be really powerful. So what we're doing today is we're rolling out the first test, right? So we try to take these stages. We're launching with about 50 creators, and we're going to start rolling it out to a small percent of people. And then as we kind of dial that in, then probably over the next month or so, we're going to roll it out so that more people can interact with these AIs. And maybe by the end of July or August or something, we'll have that fully rolled out. But it's going to be a pretty interesting experience to kind of see how people like interacting with with these AIs that their creators create. And also, as big of a part of that is just building the tools for creators. I mean, I'm curious, and you've been playing with this. I mean, I'm curious what your feedback is, and what you think is working well, what we need to work on.
Yeah, I'd love to share it. I mean, so for myself as a creator, and then my parents actually run a golf course in Ohio. So they're like the small business use case, right? If they have the Instagram profile, they're getting all these requests that they can't, like you said, we can't scale DMs and messages. So the way I think of it is it's kind of like a spectrum where there's fact-based questions that come in, and they come in, I'm sure you get this at a scale, like it's hard to fathom, right? Thousands of these fact-based questions, things like, do you have a link for this? Or have you made a video for that? Or like, where's your shirt from? These are obvious questions that can be answered. You just need to clone yourself, right? And that's where the preliminary use case for this is amazing. Every small business and creator is going to want this. And then on the other end of the spectrum, which I was playing with a lot, is more of the like opinion style questions. So these are things like, if someone says, hey, if you were me, how would you grow your brand, right? Like a multifaceted question that is tough to answer just in one go. And that's where I feel like it'll get interesting to watch the AI train on me and my responses and like kind of hone that in. If I could scale those opinion answers, then, because really my goal as a creator is one-to-one trust at scale. That's all I care about. And so I'm tapped out with my capacity. So the question that I had for you on this, as I was thinking about it, is the fact-based stuff makes a ton of sense. I think every fan would agree that they want to get that information surfaced. But on the opinion side, I think some fans will worry that the AI assistant might dehumanize that like magical connection between the fan and the human. And so the question is like, how do you go about building these AI tools for creators that are infinitely useful, but also maintain that authenticity and that human connection?
Yeah, so I guess the part of this that you're calling the opinion kind of zone is where I think more of the art form comes in, right? So the process of how these things get trained, I mean, there's obviously there's the base llama model, but then creators, when they're setting up these AIs, have the opportunity to pull in all kinds of information from their social media presence and whatever else they want to train into the system. So like you said, for the fact-based stuff, I think that's relatively clearer to instrument and understand when we're getting it right and when we're not. On the opinion side, I think that that's going to end up being more, the creators are going to have a lot more opinion around what they want the AI to express for them. And to your point about people knowing that they're interacting with an AI, that's a core design principle for us. I mean, we're not trying to create these AIs and kind of have people think that they're interacting with the creator themselves. And we want it to be as high fidelity to the creator as the creator wants, but it will also be very clearly labeled as an AI so that there shouldn't be any confusion around that. But when you're interacting with your community, you may feel comfortable taking more liberties or risks about what you express, or being a little closer to the line on something that might be sort of riskier to express, but you might want to do that as a person, but you may not want your AI to do that, right? So even though you might be able to have it be trained on the content from your social media, you may want to train it that it should stay, maybe a little more cautious on certain things, or not go into certain topics that you don't want it to engage with until, maybe in the future you get a lot more confidence that it's really going to channel you in the way that you want. And I think those are the types of tools that I think are really important. But this is where, like I said, I think it's going to be somewhat of an art form that, I don't think we know going into this what is going to be the most engaging and entertaining, and trust building formula for this. So we want to give people tools so that you can all experiment with this and see what ends up working well.
One of the questions I really wanted to get to is kind of like future feature ideas for AI Studio. So let me give you one that I think would be really cool. So as you're watching this clip, if someone could just tap on your shirt or my hat or this light, and immediately there'd be an AI layer that recognizes what the brand is, what the product is, they auto add to cart, it auto tracks affiliate back. Like that's this invisible layer that could really help creator monetization. Obviously, I'm assuming for infrastructure reasons with millions of reels created every hour, like it would be tough to support that today, but maybe that's in the backlog. What are some other things, future features of AI Studio that we haven't talked about yet that you're excited that we could get to maybe in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, that kind of thing of just understanding what the different items are is something that I think should hopefully over time apply to all posts, right? So we'll get there. I mean, we have early versions of this with the multimodal AI, with the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, where you can just say, "Hey Meta, look and tell me what this thing is," and it can and it is
It's incredible.
reasonably accurate. It kind of giving you a sense of what you're looking at and being able to answer questions around that, and that'll only get better as the Llama models continue improving and as we fully roll out the next versions and so on. But yeah, no, I think that's a big one. I think that there's a lot of things like this. I think being able to automatically do translation and dubbing is something I'm pretty excited about for the future. I think people who speak English often lose track of the fact that a lot of the world doesn't speak English, and I think being able to automatically have all your content in all these different languages and accessible to way more people is going to be really powerful if that can feel authentic and like you're speaking that language. I think those are some really exciting ideas, but those are just different. That's not really AI Studio. That's kind of different applications of AI to content and content understanding and content translation and things like that. For AI Studio itself, I think it's going to be this continual evolution of how do you give the creator more tools to tune the experience so it gets to be more entertaining and trust building, like you're saying. There will also be a part of this, which I think is just adding different modes, right? So, starting with text, I think over time, having video, having audio, eventually having it be able to be kind of 3D, so that way you could be embodied, whether, someone is wearing AR glasses and you can just show up as a hologram in their living room. I think that would be pretty neat. But I mean, we're all focused on a lot of the metaverse and all that embodiment work too. So I think that's a natural path for us to try to enable creators to just have a more natural interaction with people.
I really like this, the thing you mentioned at the beginning around this like network of agents, because I was thinking, as I was playing with it, I was thinking like, all right, let's take myself, this is level 1, level 2, what would be cool? And one example would be like a market research agent where I'm trying to come up with either what video to make or what product or course to offer to the community. If I could have an agent that goes out and polls, like actually has one-to-one conversations with 5% of my audience to try to mine for pain points, and it does that automatically, I mean, that's amazing, right? So you take like those little use cases and stack them up, all of a sudden there's like this suite of, agents or AIs or bots or whatever that it becomes really valuable for the creator.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, in the business context, it's a little clearer to think about, businesses want customer support, but then kind of the next level up from that is being able to aggregate the analytics around, okay, well, what are all the things that people need support around and how do I just improve them? And I think that there is a creator version of that too, which is like, all right, how does my community like engaging with my stuff? What's the different feedback on this? How do I want to factor that into my creative process or my business model? So I think that makes a lot of sense.
I could talk about the future, all these future use cases forever. I think one of the, like you and I share, we're tech optimists, and I think almost all of this tech, if not all of it, ends up being a net benefit for humanity in the long term. But I think one of the big questions that I get, I'm sure you get this from friends, from family, I get it in my comments all the time, is basically there's a lot of fear and uncertainty around AI, mostly because creatives and artists are afraid that AI may replace them and take their jobs. And I think about my brother, is this fantastic motion graphics designer, but he's super scared. He's worried that is all the schooling and the training and the reps, is that going to end up having been for nothing? And so I think for that group, and there's millions of people out there, what would be really beneficial is just to hear raw thoughts from someone like you on like, what is this AI powered future? What could this look like for that group? And just share kind of some mindset or framing around that for them.
I agree with you that in the future, there are going to be way more creative jobs than there are today, right? And I think you can just look at the arc of humanity and the fact that it's like we all, most people used to be farmers, and now we don't have to do that. It's like people can pursue more creative things. So, as technology evolves, the tools that we use will evolve too. And part of just being a talented person on the edge with all this is just staying up to date with the tools. But fundamentally, I think that there are going to be a lot more creative opportunities in the future with more powerful tools that allow people to do that. I guess taking a step back from that, I do think that one thing that kind of confuses me about the narrative that some people in the industry push is it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. This idea that some people are saying that there's going to be like the one true big AI that can do everything. And I just don't think that that's the way that things tend to go. And I get why, if you're like in some AI lab and you want to feel like what you're doing is super important, right? And then it's okay, yeah, it's like we're building the one true thing for the future. But I just think like realistically, that's not how stuff works, right? It's not like there was one app on people's phones that people use. There's not kind of one creator that people want all their content from. There's not one app that people want all their content from. There's not one business that people want to buy everything from. People value diversity, and I think that that's a lot of what creates sort of richness and the feeling that we're learning and progressing in life is getting to experience different kinds of things. So I just believe really deeply that the future is not going to be one AI. It's going to be a lot of AIs with a lot of different people being able to create different things. That's partially why I believe so much in open source, right? Because I don't think that AI technology is a thing that should be kind of hoarded and kind of kept that like one company gets to use it to build whatever central single product that they're building. I think if you believe that like the best experience of this and the best future is going to be a lot of different AIs and a lot of different experiences, that you want to get it out there in all these ways. So part of that is building tools for creators and for users of the platform to be able to create their own, almost like a UGC type AI situation, all the business stuff. But part of that is the open source thing too, so that way other companies out there can create different things and people can just hack on it themselves and mess around with it. So I guess that's a pretty deep worldview that I have. And I don't know, I find it a pretty big turnoff when people in the tech industry kind of talk about building this one true AI. It's like, it's almost as if they kind of think they're creating God or something. And it's like, it's just, that's not what we're doing. I don't think that's how this plays out. But yeah, I mean, obviously, we're going to be using different tools, like creative people are going to be using different tools in 10 years than we are today, just like we're using different tools today than we were 10 years ago. But I don't know. I think it gets back to your main point from before, that there's going to be a lot more creative jobs in the future than there are today.
Yeah, I mean, I think about like the digital camera, right? There were all these photographers, then the digital camera came out. The taste of photography still mattered, right? They just got a better tool potentially for different use cases. And so I think I really agree with the sentiment of, it turns me off as well that a lot of companies are trying to build this closed one wins all platform, because I just think that that's more disruptive than good.
Well, it's just not going to create as much value in the world. I think it's a little bit of a weird ideology from my perspective, but also I just think that's not how you create the best experiences for people. I mean, you want to unlock and kind of unleash as many people as possible trying out different things. And I mean, that's what culture is, right? It's not like one group of people getting to dictate everything for people. It's like you want the richness of just like all these different ideas out there.
Yeah, 100%. I want to shift back to the Ray-Ban Metas. You mentioned it earlier. I was blown away when I used it. Like the audio, the camera quality with the multimodal, it's incredible how good it is relative to what I thought it would be when I got it. And I've heard you share this framework around, you think something like smart glasses could be the phone of the next generation, and something like, Quest 3 VR could be the computer or TV of the next generation. And that makes a lot of sense to me. I want to talk about the mobile side. As a product builder, I'm really curious what else you think needs to be in the Ray-Ban Metas or the smart glass, whatever the iteration is. What else needs to be in there for billions of people to prefer using glasses over the mobile phone as like the primary hardware device?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. If you'd asked me that a few years ago, or even maybe a year and a half ago, I would have said that we needed to get to the point where we had full holographic AR before this would be the main platform that people would use. And we're working on that, right? We've kind of attacked the problem from two different directions. With the Ray-Ban Metas, we looked at it and said, okay, if you just take the best form factor for glasses today, how much technology can we pack in there without compromising the form factor, the weight, things like that? And that's what we got with Ray-Ban Meta. But then we were also coming at it from the other perspective and saying, okay, we want to create full holographic AR. It still needs to be glasses, right? It's not a headset, it's glasses, but maybe it's like a little thicker frames because there's a lot more technology that you're packing in there. It's not like the prototype version that we have that I'm really excited that we're getting closer to showing. It's not like the most stylish thing, but it's good. It's unmistakably glasses, right? It's not a headset. So I think over time, these two paths will just sort of converge. And I guess I would have thought previously that we needed the full holograms for presence, but AI has made such big leaps that I think that that is making it so that even something that's a simpler product will have more appeal sooner, right? And the Ray-Ban Meta product, the demand for it has been so much higher than we expected, which on the one hand, you love to see it. On the other hand, it's sort of a bummer that we haven't made enough of them, right? And it's sold out in most of the styles. And you can still get like the kind of basic black ones, but there are a lot of other ones that that people want that are sold out. We're ramping up production and ramping up the factory lines and all that to be able to make more. But I guess now my view is that I think that there are going to be a lot of those, right? I actually think you can create a great experience with cameras and a microphone and speakers and the ability to do multimodal AI, even before you have any kind of display in the glasses. And I actually think there's this funny thing, which is the display itself may not actually be for everyone immediately, because it adds some weight to the glasses. It makes them a lot more expensive, right? You can get Ray-Ban Metas for $300. But if you're adding all this like full holographic display in, that's going to cost significantly more, even when it's possible and we can kind of get into a form factor that we want. So I don't know. I still think probably for people who can afford a more expensive device and don't mind that it's going to be like slightly heavier, then they might want the full holographic thing. In 10 years from now, I think we'll get really small holographic things. So I think that that's going to be great. But I think for the near term, I would actually guess that a lot of people will prefer something like the Ray-Ban Metas. And we'll, of course, continue to get the form factor on that to be smaller and smaller over time, too. So I think it's a pretty exciting evolution. I think that there are basically going to be 3 different products. There's going to be kind of the displayless glasses that just do AI and can capture content, and you can listen to audiobooks and music and take phone calls and all that. Then I think that there's going to be another step up where it's not going to be full holographic display in the sense that it's not going to be like your full field of view as a hologram. But I think you'll get maybe like a little bit of a heads up display. And I think that that's going to create a bunch of interesting use cases too. You'll be able to get notifications. You'll be able to message with people. You'll be able to message with AI, answer any questions, and not just have it speak to you, but also be able to kind of see, which is higher bandwidth. So that's going to be exciting. A lot of uses for a small screen, even if it's just a kind of a small heads-up display. And then I think there's going to be the most premium version, which is kind of the full field of view, which is, we're having this conversation in the future, and like I'm a hologram sitting on your living room couch, or you're here with me, and it's not just a video call. It's not just like there's a screen and you're there as a hologram. I mean, we'd be able to interact, right? So like you want to play cards, it's like, okay, here we get a deck of cards. It's a hologram. We're interacting. We can kind of mess around with the same thing. You want to create art together, create content together, or like you draw on a whiteboard. You can just do all that stuff. I think that's going to be pretty wild, and that still is where I think it's all going. But I'm just more optimistic now that it's actually going to be a big thing even before we get there.
That's like the Tony Stark glasses is that last use case. I've heard you talk about the potential for like a wrist strap that can pick up subdermal neural, which I think is really cool too, right?
Yeah, no, that's coming.
Yeah. What's that look like?
Yeah, the neural wristband. Yeah, neural interface wristband. When people hear neural interface, they, I think that the first instinct is like, oh, it must like get wired into your brain or something. But I think most people are not going to want something wired into their brain.
Agreed.
But your brain sends signals to your body through your nervous system, right? That's like how you fire all your muscles. And it turns out that there's a lot of different pathways that aren't used in normal operation of your body. So you can have a wristband that basically gets trained to pick up different signals and pathways of your brain communicating to move your hand in different ways than you would normally do. And eventually you get to the point where you can basically communicate with this neural interface without even really moving your hand very much in a visible way to other people. So it'll start off with kind of some simpler motions, but over the coming years, you're going to be able to type with it, do all kinds of stuff, control a cursor. I think that's going to be wild, right? So I think that coupled with the glasses is going to enable a bunch of pretty amazing use cases. I mean, you're going to be able, even with the heads-up display version, or even without a display, you'll basically be able to sit there and like no matter where you are, you'll be able to send a message to a person or to an AI And again, I mean, this won't just work with Meta AI. It'll work over time with all of the different AIs, all the creator AIs, whoever you want to interact with. You can just sit there and like silently and discreetly send a message to someone, and then either have it, answer it in your ear, or kind of pop up if you have the display version, like the little text there. I think it's going to be wild. I mean, for me, one of the best things, and I prefer, meeting with people in person, but to me, one of the best parts about kind of group conversations over Zoom is you can have this whole back channel, right? Where like while you're having the main meeting or conversation, you can also just be chatting with subsets of people in a way that actually, like sometimes I'm in a meeting and I'll be, there's a question I want to ask someone, but I don't want to ask in front of everyone in the meeting. So I just have to wait until after the meeting is done. But, when you're doing it digitally, you can, you can basically just, text someone, or like text them on WhatsApp or whatever while the meeting is going on. And I think like the ability to do that with glasses while you're having actual physical in-person interactions, it's like, okay, you're interacting with people, but you can pull in, you can get information during the conversation, use it to make things more productive. I think that that's going to be super powerful.
The thing that I really undervalued is the phone, it shatters your presence, right? Like when you're in the phone, you're not in the, but as soon as you put the glasses on, even without the heads-up display, but I think with it, it won't take away you're so present. Like you can be in the world, but also, like you said, getting information in a hybrid way. I think it'll be such an interesting balance with the strap, like something with the strap and the glasses.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, you're asking, when is this going to replace phones? I mean, I don't think in the history of technology, the new platform, it usually doesn't completely make it so that people stop using the old thing. It's just that you use it less, right? So a lot of people, I think, you do tasks on their phone today that they would have used to have done on their computer because it's more convenient, right? So you just don't open your computer as much. You don't go to your desk. You just do it. I mean, I actually find even when I'm sitting at my desk, I do a lot of stuff on my phone that I would have used to have done on my computer like 10 or 15 years ago. And I think that's going to happen with glasses too. It's not like we're going to stop having a phone. It's just that it's going to stay in your pocket more, right? And you'll take it out when you really need to do stuff with it. But more and more, I think people will just start seeing, hey, I can take this photo with my glasses. I can ask this question to AI, or I can send someone a message, and it's just a lot easier with glasses. And I wouldn't be surprised if, 10 years from now, we'll probably still have phones, but it's probably going to be much more intentional usage as opposed to just reflexively reaching for it and grabbing it for any technological thing that you want to do.
Yeah. All right, I've got 3 more quick questions for you, and then we'll get you out of here. More like fun questions. The first one is, I think every few years society comes across these like frame-breaking consumer tech moments. So I think about like the first time I searched on Google, or the first friend request on Facebook, or like the first time I called an Uber, and people can almost remember when they had these first experiences and these shifts in their life.
Yeah.
I think one of the coolest parts about your job is that you get to live like 5 to 10 years in the future and play with these disruptive technologies. We talked about the glasses as one, but I'm curious, what's on the Meta roadmap in the next decade that you think has the best chance, other than the glasses, of being like one of these frame-breaking consumer tech moments?
Yeah. Well, first, I really agree with you. I mean, I think this is like the awesome part of technology is that, I think in a lot of other fields, you can be doing the same thing for a long period of time, whereas in technology, every once in a while, something comes along and just unleashes all these new opportunities, and you need to rethink what you're doing, but it's exciting. I don't know. I mean, I think we've talked about a lot of this stuff. I think the glasses are I think it'd be a big deal. We're almost ready to start showing the prototype version of the full holographic glasses. We're not going to be selling it broadly. We're focused on building the full consumer version of it rather than selling the prototype, but we're going to start demonstrating the prototype to people. And that's wild. I mean, every person who I've shown it to so far is just like their reaction. It's like giddy. I'm really looking forward to showing that to more people. So I think that's cool. The neural wristband thing is wild. Right? I mean, the fact that you can kind of input something with these subtle motions of your hand just by kind of thinking about how you want to move your hand, that is wild. And it'll get richer over time. I think often it takes until the V2 or V3 of a lot of these things before it really gets tuned and people kind of understand it. I mean, we saw that with the Ray-Ban Metas too. It was really the second version that kind of took off massively. But I think the neural wristband is going to be a pretty big deal. And depending on how that goes, it could be that it's mostly the input for glasses and for mixed reality headsets and things like that. Or it could end up being its own platform on its own, right? That basically, you could see a world where you use your neural wristband to control like everything in your house, right? Or your computer, or things like that over time. So that I think could be pretty neat. And then on the AI side, I think the rate of progress is just, it's really staggering. I mean, the fact that we went from, Llama 2 last summer to Llama 3 now. Llama 2 is not at the state of the art. Llama 3 is pretty close to caught up with the best models that are out there. So and the fact that that's open source and is available to so many people just is unlocking, so much awesome stuff. We're starting to work on Llama 4. I'm excited about that. I think that's you just add more modalities into each version. So Llama 3 got more of the kind of image modality and some of the voice and things like that. Llama 4 you'll get a lot more into that, as well as just the ability to do a little more reasoning. So that way, when if you're a creator and you're editing something, you don't need to be kind of so literal in describing what you're doing. You can kind of go back and forth and ask the AI to try some different things, and it'll come back with different ideas. I think that's going to be really compelling. So as it moves from being kind of this turn-based chatbot to more of an agent that you can kind of give an intent of what you're trying to do, and it can go away and do more complex things for you, that is going to be really cool. So I don't know, but I do think the journey that we're starting here with the creator AIs, this I think is going to be the beginning of something interesting, because I mean right now, and this has been a theme of the conversation, but I do think right now the way that a lot of people experience these AIs is through kind of the one main AI that a handful of companies has built. And I think creator AIs, and as we roll out some more of the business AI stuff, that's going to start shifting to people are going to start just interacting with a much broader diversity of experiences. And I think that's going to add a real richness to the whole ecosystem. That's going to be great.
I totally agree. I think sometimes it's just as simple as a new application or like just packaging it in a different way. And so like we've talked about, the theme is like the single to the multi. Here's an interesting question for you on the creator side. And I don't think I've ever heard you answer this. I consider you a very prolific creator, right? You're designing your own clothes, you're making music. I've heard about Mark's Meats. Like I've heard about all the hobbies. And one question that a lot of creators get asked, I get asked a lot, is like, if I had to start from scratch building a brand online or building a brand around a hobby, how do I do it? I'm curious for you to answer this. So like, let's say you were just Mark the guitarist or Mark the founder of Mark's Meats, and you got to know everything you know about world building, fandom, psychology, but we took away all the resources. How would you think about like that challenge, like going about trying to build kind of a meaningful brand online as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think we're almost sort of reflexively trained to think about this stuff these days. I mean, I'm not, for the Mark's Meats example, I mean, I'm not trying to create a business around it, but I sort of reflexively think about it in terms of kind of what's the story behind this, right? We're not just trying to, raise some cattle. We're trying to raise really high quality cattle. And, because we're doing it in Hawaii, where we're feeding the cattle this unique blend of macadamia nut meal, and we're brewing beer and feeding them beer, and we're vertically integrating, and we're growing the macadamia trees, and we're growing the beer and brewing the beer. And I find that's part of what's fun about it, right? Is everyone kind of does stuff in a unique way. And I think the kind of celebration and expression of the story about the uniqueness of what you're doing is part of what is cool. So I don't know. I mean, maybe one day when I retire, Mark's Meats will be a commercial operation. But in the for now, it's it's like just trying to do this awesome thing. And I think part of what makes it awesome is having kind of a narrative and a story around it. And social media and all these other tools online help people tell that story. But I think it's also trained us in some way to think about things in terms of what is the narrative and and what's the story around what you're doing? So I don't know. It's an interesting question.
Yeah, it'll be the next venture. I really appreciate you doing this, Mark. I've loved it. Could ask questions forever. Thank you so much for sitting down.
Yeah, no, happy to do it. Good chatting.